Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and today I would like to discuss a baffling decision that Worldcon is making, specifically a minor one in comparison to everything else they've been getting flack for, but it applies to me directly because it's about reviews. For some context, Worldcon refers to the World Science Fiction Convention, purportedly the longest held science fiction convention, and it is the place where the Hugo Awards are handed out. Now, it has gotten a lot of flack and pushback this year for using ChatGPT to vet their panelists, and we're not going to be talking very much about that. I am against AI, especially in these contexts. I think generative AI in artistic spaces is beyond stupid, and it's honestly surprising how many times people have gotten major pushback for it, but still try to use it. Y'all, it's just not that lucrative. You're going to make people madder than save any money. Oh, and there's another panel that's literally just someone complaining that when they ask bookstores for books with strong female leads and no romance, they get given sapphic books instead. Apparently, they see this as such a giant, horrible thing that they need to go on a panel to complain about it. Did Worldcon use ChatGPT to make up the panels themselves? Regardless, as for me, I have been reviewing indie books since 2019. And while I have yet to give out a single one-star review, it's not because I'm against them as a whole, just because, well, I DNF really fast. If I'm disliking a book, I will just stop reading it before I even get to the point where I give it a 1-star. But I am still for them, and that's very crucial to remember with what we're going to talk about here, because I want to bring up a very specific panel Worldcon is hosting at their Seattle convention this year. So this screenshot comes from Rosanna Pendlebury on Blue Sky, who was looking through panels, and thank you for doing that because this is something I would want to know about. But the panel description is as follows. Criticism is hard. How do you avoid reading reviews? What happens when you do read reviews and must pick yourself up after a harsh one and still continue writing, especially if the reviewer had a point? Authors will share their worst reviews and what they did to overcome them. This panel is focused on vulnerability, frustration, and how to maintain creativity when down in the dumps. Note, this is not intended to bash reviewers. Readers have the right to critique and give books 1-star reviews. So, there's a couple things wrong with this, and at least one Worldcon themselves must be aware of, because they even give this is not intended to bash reviewers. But like, okay, you don't intend that. How are you going to keep that from happening? Like, it's a panel. Those aren't very structured. How are you going to prevent an author from just going off on a tangent and complaining about the review or trying to argue against it and defend their work and how, oh, that reviewer just didn't understand it and the like how are you going to keep that from happening? I don't know the names of any of the panelists in there. The excerpt did not share any names or the names of the moderator, which honestly, this is one of those instances where it's going to hinge on having a fantastic moderator, which not all of these conventions get really good moderators for their panels, so that would be really iffy, and I would not envy that moderator their job of trying to keep everything on track. But it's just the fact that, Worldcon knew ahead of time that this would be a risk, and mind you, they still did not say this will not be a session to bash reviewers. They say it's not intended as one. That's them covering their asses with legal speak so that if it does devolve, they can claim, well, we didn't mean for it to, and probably blame it all on the panelists. But again, why this in the first place? But for argument's sake, let's say they have a killer moderator, and this moderator is going to be able to prevent anyone from devolving into just complaining, and they're going to focus on the more positive messages of your work is not you, a negative critique about your work is not a negative critique about you as a person, and while yes, you might occasionally use reviews to better your work, you should not depend on them, and the idea that, reviews are mostly for readers, not the authors. These are not your beta readers. Regardless, even if all of that happens, this is still a bad look because you're having authors bring up specific, searchable 1-star reviews. Even if they don't mention the person's name, if they quote the review directly, it's not gonna be hard to find that review. You can go to the Goodreads, to the Amazon, wherever, open up the 1-star reviews, and search with Control F. That simple. So what are you going to do if say you have an author whose readership is attending either in person or I believe this is also streaming virtually. They're attending, they love this author, and this author starts talking about how this specific negative 1-star review broke their heart and made them question their entire writing career. There is a gigantic risk that a now overprotective reader base is going to seek out that review and harass that reviewer. And I know this because I have seen it happen. Thankfully, have not had to deal with it, but I have seen it. There have been cases where an author comes online on, Twitter, Blue Sky, wherever, to just share their heartbreak over a particularly negative review. I remember one in particular, I believe on Twitter, that was heartbroken over her first 1-star review. And everyone was mostly just, oh, it's okay, it's not you, just showing that author support. But one person took it on themselves to call the reviewer mean because it was too detailed. Yeah, because apparently reviewers can get flagged for both not giving enough details and being too detailed, and then went to report the review. Despite everyone acknowledging it was in good faith and the reviewer had given genuine critiques and it wasn't any of the isms, right? They weren't being the gay people were in here. It was literally genuine critiques. Still got called mean, still had their review reported because someone thought they were supporting the author. In general, if you as an author genuinely believe that negative good faith reviews should exist, never bring them up to your audience. Okay, even if you're sure that your audience would never do something like that, it only takes a couple to start a harassment campaign. Okay, just leave it be. Put it in the group chat. Oh my gosh, I got this horrible 1-star review with your other author friends who will also keep it quiet. Don't put that reviewer in front of the metaphorical firing squad known as an overprotective readership. Your readers will think they're helping their favorite author, and instead, another reviewer gets harassed and might give up reviewing entirely, because that's been happening so much lately. Reviewers are getting harassed, or they're seeing other reviewers get harassed by big name authors, and they think to themselves, fuck, this is too much of a risk. I'm just not going to review at all, because only being able to review positively makes you feel like a walking billboard instead of someone that's genuinely analyzing media. Because I see that all the time too. People are like, well, you just don't have to review negatively at all. Then you might as well just not review. You might as well just take sponsorships. Because if you're not allowed to get negative, your review means nothing. It just means that you read a book and you don't want to risk getting harassed. That's it. The wording of this panel is also strange because it seems to be trying to flip the power imbalance between authors and reviewers by implying that these reviews were things that had to be overcome as if they were that big stumbling blocks. And it's like, my brother in ill mater, you can just refuse to look at the reviews. You can just not look at them. There, stumbling block removed, you're welcome. But this idea of reviews being something that has to be overcome as if they are the big, powerful thing is strange to me, because in most cases, the author has more power than the reviewer. Might there be some rare instance where a book talker or booktuber with a giant following reviews some indie debut with less than 20 readers at that point? Yes. That is the exception, not the norm. In the vast majority of cases, the author has way more power than the reviewer. So letting this one reviewer who does not even have that much power, because 1-star reviews don't necessarily not sell books, that seems weird to me. And yeah, it definitely looks like they have some amount of power over the author in the author's head, because the author is apparently still not over that review enough to want to come on a panel and drop it specifically. Because again, it appears by the description that they're going to be quoting these reviews. And if you're up there to talk about a specific review and what that review specifically said, I don't know how much you're over it. I don't know how much that's not affecting you anymore if you want to talk about it in detail, what this one specific review said. But for the most part, again, no, authors have the power. And again, they can use that power, even unintentionally, to make that reviewer's life hell and make them not want to do it anymore. Just Why not bring in actual reviewers for this? Now, this next point comes more from other people discussing this on Blue Sky, because I am not as clued in with Worldcon as other people, but that is the fact that if you look at the greater trend of how Worldcon treats reviewing as a whole, this is just another level of disrespect. For example, you can only win a FanWorks award if you're a reviewer. There is no reviewing award, meaning that all reviewing gets lumped in with all fan fiction. And we're not bashing on fan fiction. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just those are very different mediums. They're entirely different crafts. And also, reviewer isn't necessarily a fan of everything they review. You can review negatively and be like, didn't like this thing for X, Y, and Z. Whereas someone writing fan fiction is usually some level of fan. They might want to correct something that they disliked in the original text with their fan fiction, but generally speaking, they like it. And that's not the case with reviewing, but they don't get their own section. And there have been very few, if any, panels about reviewing. And so, of course, the one time there is, it is at risk of devolving into a giant complaining fest. And to be clear, you can have reviews without bringing up negative reviews or discussing them as a whole, because there's a lot that authors still need to learn, specifically indie authors, about reviewing, because I have put out a variety of content around this, how to talk to reviewers, how to ask for a review. And every single time I have ever re-upped that video, that blog post, and shared it, I will get a, thank you so much for this, I had no idea. Like, there is a dearth of information about how to interact with reviewers, mostly because as much as publishing relies on reviews, and it relies on reviews more so than almost any other industry, let's be clear. Like, every industry has reviews to a certain extent, but it is like the bread and butter of the publishing industry. Like, in that aspect, there is a lot more to be done. There is a lot more information to give, especially for indie authors, and just asking questions of reviewers, letting authors be like, how do you decide what you're going to review? How do you decide what number you're giving it? Like, those kind of questions could be incredibly useful, could be incredibly necessary for certain indie authors getting reviews out in the first place, because there are so many good books that just couldn't get out there because the indie author didn't know where to take it. But all of that being said, there were options here of putting reviewers in the space and letting them talk about it, but instead we are going to frame it as reviews bad, reviews a thing to overcome by the poor, hurt authors. Again, I'm seriously hoping that they're going to have just some killer moderator that knows exactly what they're doing and can prevent anything from devolving, but I'm so not sure. Like, I'd have to hear that the moderator they chose has a reputation for doing this and knows exactly what they're up to. And also, I really hope that no author gets a giant amount of their readership in the audience. I hope the audience is just mostly people interested in reviews as a whole, and we're not going to have anyone trying to go ride or die for someone because one rando on Goodreads gave them a 1-star. I really cannot emphasize that enough. Everything in this description reads that this was just a review that hurt the author mentally and emotionally. Not that it hurt their sales, not that this 1-star review tanked their readership. No, that it hurt them emotionally. And that is so risky. That is so rife with the potential to turn into just complaining and how dare this reviewer read this. And especially when, again, these are readers with so much less power than the authors they're reviewing. I'm so anxious about this. I don't know that I'll watch the panel. Probably won't. But I might be looking on the internet to make sure that no one is getting harassed over this. And in general, reviews are important. Reviewers are important. We can sell books. I have been told repeatedly that someone wishlisted a book or put a book on their TBR or pre-ordered it because I reviewed it. And I am small. Look at my subscriber count. Okay, not a lot there. Look at my blog readership. Not a lot there. And I'm still selling books with my reviews. So the idea that it's unimportant is just, it's annoying. But at this point, it's about what I expect. Thank you so much for watching another rambly video. Have you ever heard of Seattle Worldcon? Are you planning on going? Would you watch this review panel? What do you think about it? Do you think that it'll be fine, or is there a chance that something could devolve? Please let me know down in the comments below. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.